How's it going, everyone? It's Sam. Over the last few days, we had something very disappointing happen. We had the founder of one of the world's largest messaging apps, one of the largest social media platforms, arrested. And I know some people feel very strongly about free speech, which they should, because Bitcoin is freedom. Bitcoin is free speech, and this is a Bitcoin-focused channel. So I want to take a second here today to take a look at what just happened with the founder of Telegram. If you think about people that are maybe on a similar level to Elon Musk, maybe not in the breadth of companies that they have, but in their focus on free speech, this founder seems about as close to Elon as you can get. And I want to cover what just happened. Also, relating this back to what Whitney Webb has talked about before, and then we'll go through maybe how you can make some money on this. If you don't mind, please hit subscribe if you like this kind of video. Also, you can hit the bell notification so you can see future videos just like this. There's also a link underneath the video to Margex where you can trade cryptocurrencies using leverage. We've been able to make a lot of money this way, and I just placed some trades. So we're going to be talking about Toncoin today and Telegram. If you didn't know, you can trade Toncoin over on Margex. So there's a link to this underneath the video. Let's start here. Pavel Durov, and we'll get to some non-Telegram stuff, some crypto-related stuff towards the end of the video, but Pavel Durov, the founder of Telegram, is arrested in France and facing 20 years in jail for refusing to censor his platform. These charges include terrorism, money laundering, and more. Looks like they're targeting anyone who defends free speech. Let's actually play a clip. So Rob from Digital Asset News covered this really well today. And if you didn't know, I actually made a video with Rob just a few days ago talking about the golden opportunity in crypto. He's actually buying Toncoin right now, but I want to play a little clip from what from his live stream that was just a few minutes ago and show you kind of his background, Pavel's background. And then we'll get into some more information on Pavel and then the Whitney Webb clip.
Pavel Durov, which you can find right here. And actually, there is a great interview between him and Tucker Carlson where he lays out everything that happened with his first social media experiment in Russia, where essentially the Russian government came to him and said, you will give us all the users' data so we can spy on them. And he said, screw you, I'm not going to do that, and let it languish. And then they came up with Telegram, moved to America, and the same thing happened. And he talks about how CIA agents and FBI were trying to poach his developers so they could get backdoor access to Telegram to spy on Americans and everybody around the world. And that's why they moved to UAB, to Dubai. And because of that, everything was going good until he landed in France. This is from Hato Anzo. He says, do you understand the severity of what's happening? Pavel Durov believes in free speech, create a platform that deep state doesn't have access to, so now they've arrested him. And the offenses are, and this is all allegedly, because this just kind of came out yesterday or late last night, and it said the alleged offenses include terrorism, narcotic supply, fraud, money laundering, and receiving stolen goods.
Now, I will say, right off the bat, we don't really know everything that's happening here. If he was really arrested for what people claim, which is that he's just, he's not willing to work with governments and willing to censor, that will be horrible. Now, if there's something else, like if he really did help terrorists, or if he, somehow is tied to money laundering himself versus just allowing it through the platform should not get in trouble for people doing illegal activities on it. Section 230 in the US made it so that social media companies, websites in general, the companies themselves should not get in trouble, should not be considered doing anything illegal if people use it for illegal activities. And I think that's very important. That's a very important distinction that was made that allowed internet companies to actually scale, right? If a founder is worried about going to jail, they might not actually create the underlying platform that will help the world in 99.99% of situations. That 0.01% of situations might be used for something illegal, just like Bitcoin, right? There might be people that use Bitcoin for illegal activities, but that doesn't mean that Bitcoin itself is a terrible technology, right? Same thing, unfortunately, has happened in other cases, though, besides just Pavel, right? Pavel now getting arrested. If it really was because of the technology, we've seen that before. We've seen that with Tornado Cash within crypto, where there's a developer that created something that allowed you to mix up transactions, mix up crypto, and then send it out, and then people wouldn't be able to tell where it came in and where it went out, which was used for money laundering. The person that created that is in jail. Ross Albright, who was the creator of Silk Road, very similar, right? He's still in jail. Every Bitcoin conference, people have like free Ross shirts, and that's one of the biggest things that people want to see done, because they think that he stands for free speech, free technology, all that kind of stuff. Now, I have to be careful about what I say here, because recently I got a video taken down because it was labeled harmful. But even 80 years ago, right, there's been a recent movie, Oppenheimer, about someone that created a technology that then was persecuted by his own government that wanted him to make the technology. So things just, this is not new. This continues to happen over and over. If you are creating something that can be beneficial, but then someone uses it for illegal activities, I don't think that should be your problem. Now, let's see what Whitney Webb talked about, because I want to loop this all together, right? I want to explain what's happening in a broader sense, but let's play this Whitney Webb clip.
You've obviously done a lot of work previously investigating intelligence agencies, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people work at them consider themselves the good guys, trying to make the world a better place. I equally know you are probably one of the most skeptical people in the world of intelligence agencies and the pervasive influence they have on society, the world. And so specifically with how they've started to infiltrate capital markets, can we talk about what you've seen there and compare it? So to give people like comparisons, let's try and compare it as best as possible to how they've done the same with, say, the big social media giants, the Twitters, the Facebooks, etc.
Sure. Okay, so in the case of like U.S. intelligence, if you go back to the very beginning, and there's even CIA like deputy directors that have said that, it was all Wall Street people at the beginning. It was Wall Street lawyers, it was Wall Street bankers. And since that point, from the genesis of the CIA, there's been revolving doors between CIA and Wall Street that have continued up until today. And really, you could look at the CIA as a public-private enterprise in some sense. It's a public security agency, but it's more or less functioned throughout its history as Wall Street's secret police. That's why its earliest coups, for example, like its first coup in Guatemala, was done on behalf of United Fruit, a major multinational corporation headquartered in the United States, which interestingly enough was later acquired by Leon Black's father, and then Leslie Wexner's business mentor.
I know that name.
Yeah. And then you also have, like the coup in Iran over like Anglo-American oil, like them losing their holdings there. The coup in 1973 in Chile, you can argue it was because of efforts to nationalize copper and all these largely Western mining companies losing out, and then they come in and do a coup and what have you. It's really been symbiotic for some time. And I think, as we moved into the information age, the CIA saw an opportunity. Well, let me back up a little bit. The internet from the very beginning was, it originally started as ARPANET, a project of the Pentagon. And for anyone that really wants to know about that history, I would highly recommend the book Surveillance Valley by Yasha Levine. It was essentially created in Vietnam as a counterinsurgency program. That was the goal of it, by the same people that were involved in things like the Phoenix program, which was the first instance of military intelligence, at least US military intelligence, using databases to come up with names of dissidents and then assassinating them. And a lot of them weren't actually dissidents, like suspected dissidents or neighbors of dissidents and all of this stuff. And then from Phoenix program, it goes, all these CIA-backed dictatorships like, Pinochet in Chile, for example, Operation Condor, use the exact same system. And they've been building these systems with the internet even before the modern internet as we use it now existed. And so a lot of these there were efforts early on to king make the companies who would come to dominate the internet. And that has happened. It's just a matter of public record. If you look at the biggest companies in big tech, I've done work about how Facebook was essentially launched as a resurrection of a failed DARPA program called LifeLog by the same person that resurrected the failed DARPA program, Total Information Awareness, one of the most insane surveillance proposals ever in US history, resurrected as Palantir. You can thank Peter Thiel for that, co-founder of PayPal. And a lot of these other companies that have become huge, Google, for example, there's a good article by Nafez Ahmed written on by Insert when he published at Insert Intelligence called "How the CIA Made Google." If you look at a lot of these companies, you will find intelligence agencies at the beginning. Palantir, I mentioned earlier, took In-Q-Tel money, developed very closely with the CIA. It began at PayPal. It's a PayPal spinoff, Palantir is. Oracle, another huge company in Silicon Valley. Larry Ellison, before he started Oracle, was working on Project Oracle at the CIA on databases and was the infrastructure for Oracle as we know it now. A lot of these, there's been a lot of symbiosis between intelligence agencies and these big companies for a long time, and they couldn't have done it without venture capital. And that's arguably why the CIA launched In-Q-Tel in the late 90s, because they wanted to become big players in Silicon Valley. Because when you decide, who the kingmakers are, there's a lot of things actually to be said about that. So what I mentioned earlier about total information awareness, this is a program that was just deemed so insane in the early 2000s that essentially every mainstream media publication railed against it and rights group railed against it. But then when they relaunched the same program essentially as a private entity, as a private sector entity, no one complained. And so the CIA for a long time and other intelligence agencies have followed this exact playbook, specifically Israeli intelligence. When you move into the private sector, you can get away with a lot more than you can in the public sector sometimes, depending on what you're trying to do. And so there have been efforts to do that, I would argue, for a very long time. And if you look at how these big tech companies have developed, and, for example, revelations from the Snowden leaks, just like how the extent to which these private companies, how much of your data that they're selling or passing to U.S. intelligence for warrantless surveillance. I mean, they've been collaborators of this for a very, very long time. And I think there really hasn't been enough scrutiny of that. And I would really argue that a lot of these companies operate more often than not as intelligence fronts. And it's kind of gotten to the point, too, where in U.S. specifically, the people behind these very big tech, the biggest of the big tech companies, are also the main donors to the two U.S. political parties. Right. You have Peter Thiel on the Republican side, you have Reid Hoffman on the Democrat side, and Eric Schmidt on the Democrat side. I mean, they fund our politicians and they dominate our private sector infrastructure, especially as we've been forced to be more online, specifically since the COVID era. And the goal is to have things digitalize even further and have it all be on these people's systems and have us become completely dependent on their infrastructure. And these people are in bed with intelligence. And even aside from the intelligence connections, they have a lot of dirty laundry. Why did Jeffrey Epstein have connections?
Okay, so this all ties back to itself, right? It's all connected. Now, I think it's pretty obvious. The government is full of wealthy elites, and they work with wealthy elites, they're friends, right? There are a couple things they want. One, obviously, they want to enrich themselves. Okay, great. But they also want control of everyone else. So how do they get that? Two main things, in my opinion. Well, maybe three. They know what people think and what they're posting and that kind of stuff. So they have data on the backside and what do people use the most? Social media, right? It's very hard to, monitor people at home and what they're having personal conversations about. But that does happen. Let's be clear. So they want that data. They also want to be able to control your money, right? They also want to be able to control what you see. So those three things are kind of, everything is connected together, but seeing what you see and getting your data, what you're outputting, and then what is coming in is all social media, right? That's a lot of social media. People aren't getting their news from traditional sources anymore. I mean, that happens too, and there are government entities that control newspapers and television as well, but they're moving over to social media because that's where the majority of people spend their time. And then programmable currencies, which Whitney Webb also talks about a decent amount, controlling stablecoin, maybe even dollarizing Bitcoin, right? So that way, if they push certain things on you, and they don't like what you're saying, well, then they can control your currency, which is kind of like a last resort probably. But they're willing to use it, right? We've already seen that with the Canadian truckers. They'll take money away from you, even without going through the court system. So yeah, it's all tied back together. And there are a couple entities that don't really work with the governments, as we know, Telegram, Twitter. So it's all tied back to itself. Now, I don't want this to be all doom and gloom. There are a couple things that you can do that can help combat this. And this is not a new thing either. This has been happening for a very long time, and life can still be good. But there are a couple things that you can focus on. But first, let's just hit a couple of the news pieces because they're also kind of tied into this. And then we'll get onto how to set yourself up to win. Bitcoin mining, now legal in Russia starting today. All rigs that went to Kazakhstan will drive over the border and connect back to the cheapest electricity on earth. So even places that monitor everything you do, Bitcoin's right for. Like every single country on earth that I think is forward-looking, that wants to compete, they're going to be mining Bitcoin because there's this game theory that's playing out. They're going to be buying Bitcoin, right? And they're going to have private companies that do the same thing. But the countries themselves are also probably going to be mining Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is inescapable, in my opinion. Just another example of how governments are really bad at things and private companies that compete with each other, capitalism works. NASA just announced that SpaceX, Elon Musk of Tesla's company, will bring back the stranded BA astronauts from the International Space Station using their capsule, their Dragon capsule. If you haven't heard about this, there were 2 astronauts that have been stuck for about 60 days, and their trip was supposed to be 8 days. They've been stuck for 60 days at the International Space Station because of their spaceship having some kind of issue, and now they're hiring SpaceX because they realize they can't really do it themselves. Okay, so just another example of the government doing something wrong, needing private help. So what can we do, right? Obviously, there's this common thread. RFK Jr. gives historic speech on censorship. Telegram founder arrested for not censoring the platform. Simply Bitcoin censored and deplatformed on YouTube for talking about Bitcoin. I had a video taken down recently as well that talked about Bitcoin and some of those deep state conspiracy theories. What can we do? Well, Toncoin, the crypto that is, connected to Telegram, is down like 16%. So something you could do is you could maybe buy this dip on Telegram or Toncoin. People probably won't forget about this. There's no rug pull or anything. There is the ability to trade this over on Margex. If you want to trade, you could set this up in just a few minutes and you could start trading. Another thing you can do, so that's a short-term thing. Maybe you want to short it, maybe you want to long it, whatever you want to do. Another thing you could do is just try to become as wealthy as possible. Try to grind as much as possible to put yourself in the best position moving forward. Obviously, the wealthier people have access to better healthcare, better information, better living conditions, and just in general, it's a lot easier if you are wealthier, right, to be able to circumvent some of these issues that come up, to be able to buy things when you need them, when there are extreme events that happen. to be able to get out of whatever situation you're in if you need to go somewhere because there's some kind of global issue or war or something like that. So like just becoming wealthier, just working longer hours, being able to invest in assets that go up and appreciate, and focusing on gaining wealth right now, which everyone watching this channel is doing, as opposed to the general public, which is, maybe not as focused on gaining wealth, and they're more focused on living in the here and now because they think that, the world is getting crazier, but we have to enjoy the here and now. Obviously, you need to do that too, but you need to have a focus on gaining wealth as well. I think that's a longer term play. You're just going to be better set up for when the world gets crazier if you're in a better position financially. And you know what? I totally forgot. The most obvious way you can protect yourself is also to dollar cost average some Bitcoin. Have some kind of reserve. Of course, you can buy other stuff, right? Like some water reserve, maybe some protection, some food. Maybe you want to build a bunker. Who knows with the craziness that's going to happen. Maybe you need some land out in Chile. That's what Whitney Webb says she's doing. But also, if you have some censorship resistant money that is disconnected from everything, then that can be very good for you. And maybe the best way to do that is to do some work within crypto so that it's un-KYC'd, set up a separate wallet, do some work, never have it touch a bank account, have it disconnected from everything else. So that way, if there is some kind of censorship, if there is some kind of government crackdown that tries to take your Bitcoin, like we have seen before with other assets, you have some protection, you have some sovereign money as well. And of course, you can dollar cost average the Bitcoin the normal way too. That will be helpful. And even if you just want to use Bitcoin as an investment, like through an ETF, that's going to be helpful too, right? There are various levels to this, but that can be extremely beneficial as well. Let me know your thoughts though underneath the video. Do you think this all ties together? I think it really does. I think there are a lot of common threads here, and obviously in the end, everything is about money, power, and then I guess dopamine, right? Everything comes back to those three things, it seems like. And reduction of stress as well. Let me know your thoughts though. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Check out the video here on the end screen because it is suggested by YouTube and they think that you'll like it. Also, there's that link to Margex. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one.